All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain on something you probably have in your kitchen right now. We're talking about the incredible hidden story of the humble but totally mighty lentil.
I mean, it sounds like a simple question, right? But believe me, the answer for the lentil, it's anything but simple. We're going to trace its whole journey from this tiny little seed in the dirt all the way to your dinner plate. And trust me, you're probably going to be pretty surprised by what we dig up. Okay, so every lentil's story, it starts right here, in the soil. And the whole thing is this really carefully timed dance with the seasons. This is where the magic really begins.
You know, for the farmers growing these, the calendar is absolutely everything. They have the super narrow window, late spring, to get those seeds in the ground. Why? So the lentils are perfectly ready for harvest by the end of summer. It is a total race against the clock.
Now, here's something really cool that farmers do. Instead of, plowing the whole field bare, they plant the new seeds directly into the stubble from the last crop. And this stubble, it acts kind of like a protective blanket for the ground, saving all that precious topsoil from blowing or washing away. It's just a brilliant, super sustainable way of doing things.
So, you're probably wondering, how do these seeds actually get into the ground? Yeah, this isn't just someone throwing seeds out by hand. This is some serious, high-tech, precision stuff. There's this amazing machine called an air drill, and it uses these jets of air to place each tiny seed exactly 1.5 inches deep. And get this, just 1 week later, you start to see the first little green sprouts pop up. All right, so once that seed is nestled in the ground, its life really kicks off. It goes from this little tiny speck into a full-on food-producing plant. Now, you might be imagining these huge, towering plants, right? But nope, lentil plants are actually pretty short. They only get to be about a foot tall. And that small size, well, it turns out to be a really big deal when it's time to harvest. So the part we actually eat, the lentils themselves, are the seeds of the plant. And they grow inside these cute little pods. Each pod doesn't hold much, just 1, 2, or maybe 3 lentils inside. Okay, so here's where we get to one of the lentil's first superpowers. This thing is an incredibly tough little plant. It's built for dry, semi-arid climates, which means it can grow and thrive without needing a ton of water. And that, right there, makes it a super important crop in so many parts of the world. And now, we've reached the climax of our story, the harvest. This is it. This is when all those months of patience and growth just explode into this flurry of activity. So remember how I mentioned the plants are really short? Well, that creates a bit of a challenge. You can't just use any old harvester. Farmers have to use this special piece of gear called a flex header. What it does is it stays incredibly close to the ground, literally flexing and bending with the shape of the land so it can scoop up every single one of those little plants. So once the plants are scooped up, this really fascinating process happens inside the combine. It shakes everything around and separates the valuable seeds, the lentils, into a huge tank. But here's the best part. Nothing goes to waste. The rest of the plant, all the stalks and leaves, gets chopped up into tiny pieces and spread right back onto the field. It basically becomes instant compost, feeding the soil for the next crop. It's just this perfect closed-loop system. So we followed the lentil from a seed all the way to the harvest. But the most incredible part of its story, it actually happens invisibly, deep underground. This, my friends, is where the lentil reveals its real superpower. It all boils down to this amazing process called nitrogen fixation. Okay, stick with me here. Lentils are what you call a pulse crop, and they team up with these special bacteria that live in the soil. Together, they can pull nitrogen, which is like superfood for plants, right out of the thin air and store it in the ground. They are literally making their own natural fertilizer. And to really get why this is such a game changer, think about it like this. Most crops, like corn or wheat, they suck nitrogen out of the soil. So farmers have to keep adding fertilizer. But lentils, they do the complete opposite. They put nitrogen back in. So when farmers rotate their crops and plant lentils, it actually reduces the need for fertilizer for the next crop on the whole farm. And all of that, it leads to what might be the most mind-blowing fact of all. Lentils can have a negative carbon footprint. Seriously, just let that sink in for a second. The whole process of growing them can actually pull more carbon out of the atmosphere than is released to produce and harvest them. Wow! So let's just recap the total impact here. They make their own fertilizer, which cuts way down on the need for chemical ones. That reduces greenhouse gases. They actively pull carbon out of the air and lock it into the soil. I mean, this tiny little seed is actually a massive tool for building a more sustainable way to feed ourselves. It is truly incredible.
Okay, so the harvest is done. The soil is actually healthier than before. There's just one last chapter in this lentils journey from the field to your kitchen. And this last leg of the journey is pretty straightforward. All those harvested lentils get stored in these big bins to keep them safe and dry. And from there, trucks take them off to be processed, bagged up, and shipped out to grocery stores and dinner tables all over the world.
And this really brings the whole story full circle. For the farmers who grow lentils, it's about way more than just one harvest. It's about being good stewards of the land. It's about pride in keeping the soil healthy, so it can keep feeding people for generations to come. The lentil isn't just something they grow. It's like a partner in that mission.
So after hearing all that, the next time you're in the kitchen scooping some lentils into a pot of soup, what are you going to think about? Will you just see a simple food? Or are you going to see the whole story, a story of smart farming, of a tough little plant that thrives in the drylands, and of a tiny seed that has the superpower to literally heal the soil and help fight climate change?